Hi, I'm Wendy Gardiner from Simplicity. One of my favourite zip insertions is a concealed zip or invisible zip. No stitching shows on the outside. I'm going to show you how to do it. You actually put the zip in before you sew the rest of the seam, unlike a conventional centred or lap zip. So I have prepared my fabric edges by neatening the raw edges. I've turned under the seam allowance to the wrong side and pressed it, so I've got a nice crease. I'm also going to use an invisible zip foot. This is the Janome invisible zip foot, and this is the brother one. So they're very similar in that they've both got small holes for the needle to go through, and on the underside there are deep grooves, and that's where the teeth go. So this is an invisible zip, and you can tell it's an invisible zip because on the right side there are no teeth. All you have is the little tab at the end, and the underside is where the teeth are. So I'm now going to show you how to insert it. First thing to do is to fit the foot. So I'm going to release the foot that's already on. You will have a button or a lever on the back of the foot to release it, and then clip this one in place. This particular foot has a bar at the back to go over the bar at the back and then clips on at the front. So it's very, very simple to put on. And the next thing to do is, with your garment ready prepared, I have it sort of ready, and I'm going to place the zip right side down in position so that the teeth are running along that crease on the left edge. So I position my zip at the top so the teeth are in place. This is one time when I actually pin vertically as opposed to horizontally. So I'm pinning that in place. Open the zip completely. I can take this piece out of the way for now and pin the zip all the way down so that the teeth are on the crease that I made previously. So this is the right side of the fabric. The zip is on the seam allowance only, and I'm pinning it in place. You can then hand baste or machine baste down the centre of the tape to hold it in place, or you can just go straight to machine stitching. So I've positioned my pinned zip and my fabric piece under the foot so that the teeth are in the right hand side groove under the foot. And then the needle I've moved just a smidgen over to the left so that it's going to stitch virtually under the teeth, because the teeth will sort of roll out as you go along, and you want them to be, the stitching to be nice and close to those teeth. Go quite slowly. And you have to take the pins out before you get to them, because of course I've got them vertically along the stitching line. As I say, you can actually baste it down the centre of the zip tape to hold it in place, so you're not working with pins in at all. As I get towards the bottom, you'll see that the foot will get to the actual zip pull, so you can't stitch to the very end of the tape. That's the difference between a regular zip and an invisible zip. So sometimes if you're actually working on a skirt length one, you might want to buy a zip that's an inch longer, 2.5 centimetres longer than the pattern requires, so that you've got that extra inch for the closure, because you cannot get any closer than the zip pull. So I'm just going to reverse stitch there. That's that one side done. I'm now ready to put the other side in. So I'm going to close the zip. I do this because I want to make sure I put the other side in the right piece the right way round. So I'm going to put my piece up against the first one, lay it on top, make sure it matches, and then I can just pin it in place. Now for starters, I'm going to pin through both layers there. That's just to make sure I have it in the right place. Unzip it again, and then turn this all over so that I can now pin it, as I did before, to the seam allowance only, with the teeth along the crease that I've made. So I can take that pin out, which is through both. And the teeth are on the crease of the fold, which is the seam line, and then I go all the way down the edge. And then I'm going to stitch again. And this time I will have the teeth in the left-hand groove of the underside of the foot. So I'll just forward and back to anchor that in. And now I've got the teeth of this side of the zip going through my left groove. And again, stitching close to those teeth. So the needle's just to the right of them this time. And again, I just get just to the zip pull and back stitch to anchor it in place. And again, that's finished. So the next step is to finish the seam. So again, I'm going to pull the zip up just to double check it. And all you should be able to see, so when that's pressed nicely, all you can see is the little zip pull at the end. If you find that you haven't got as close to the teeth as you want to, just do it again a little bit closer to the teeth. So when that's pressed nicely, that's all you'll be able to see, just that little bit there. So now I'm going to finish the end, because as you could see, I couldn't get to the very end, and of course the end of the seam hasn't been done. So I'm going to fold that over, right sides together, pull that out of the way and open the seam allowances so that I can pin with the right sides together, pin along the seam line, and then keeping that out of the way, I'm going to pin so that I'm going to start stitching. If you can see there, that's the stitching holding the zip tape in. I'm going to start stitching about 2 to 3 millimeters away, about here. I'm not going to try and join it up perfectly, because when you try to join it perfectly, you end up with a little bump. So come out just literally a couple of millimeters, but a little bit higher, so you're going to overlap a little. So I'm going to pin there. And that's where I'm going to start stitching, keeping the tails out of the way, and stitch down to the bottom of the seam. Now I'm going to put on the regular zip foot, and this one will have a little groove either side of a single toe. So again, I've got a bar, and that bar fits into a groove which is under the foot holder. And I want to make sure I attach it so the foot is furthest away from the zip. Now remember, you might have moved your needle, so before starting to stitch, do make sure that your needle isn't going to fall and hit the foot. So I'm going to move my needle over and line it all up. I've got that pin there to show me where to do it. Pop the pin out because I don't want to try and stitch on the pin. Lower the presser foot and I'm ready to go. Having moved that out of the way, I'm going to stitch on the spot to start with. Let's get that thread out of the way. And then continue down the seam. And the last stage is, because you still have this tail, is to make sure you open it out and you stitch just on the seam allowance. So I'm just going to pop that foot off and put it over to the other side. So again, the foot is further away from the teeth, and I can just stitch that last bit of tail that's not anchored at all down to the seam allowance only. And do the same on the other side. Again, just on the seam allowance, so open that out. Of course, if you had basted down the centre of the zip tape to hold it in place, you wouldn't have to do this step because the chances are it would have already been done. Invisible zips are a wonderful way of putting in a zip. You can't see any stitching on the outside and they really are easy to do.